Hi, I'm Josh from the Journey Church. We're making our way through Romans Disarmed in order to liberate Paul's letter and our communities in the face of structural oppression. Following the lament in chapter 5, creation and the defilement of home, the authors justify the idea that such an ecological focus is central to understanding Paul's letter, given that some people might read the letter and not consider it to be about that at all. So they consider idolatry, which is talked about a lot. Idolatry is the worship of other gods. Who or what you worship shapes your whole life, and what the fruit of that life looks like. If you trust that God is an abundant provider, the way you live in the land will reflect that. But if you don't trust that God provides and instead trust in an economic system that functions on the destruction of the land, then the idolatry of that system and the treatment of the land again reflect each other. But it's actually much more explicit than that. Paul is drawing heavily on the prophets and the Psalms when discussing idolatry. Ellen Davis writes that throughout the Old Testament, land degradation is a sure sign that humans have turned away from God. Conversely, the flourishing of the land marks a return to God. In short, the Old Testament represents the condition of the land as the single best indicator of human responsiveness to God. Paul's reference to the groaning of creation has often been taken as generic metaphorical language, but creation is groaning for the same reason the people are crying out: the economic exploitation and violent militarism of empire. In the places Paul knew well, he would have seen the consequences of such destruction on lives and landscapes. The authors then have a no-holds-barred discussion of moving from lament to ecological repentance. It is a truth that many of us are aware of but struggle to keep at the forefront of our minds, that the climate emergency we face requires such a transformation of our day-to-day, that if we were living proportional, healthy, just lives, our whole lives would look very different. Things that right now it might seem unimaginable to do life without or to do differently will have to come under the scope of our own re-evaluation. When thinking about what we buy, we should contemplate its production, our use of it, and its eventual disposal. In all three areas, planet and people, ourselves included, can be harmed in totally avoidable ways. To think of eating in season, buying locally, giving up technology, sharing more so we use less. The authors suggest that when Paul says that we are to no longer let sin rule over our mortal bodies and that we should no longer be tools of injustice but rather of justice, he is talking about things like these. The point is not to be depressed, either by the scale of the destruction or how fundamentally our lives should change. Depression is debilitating. Instead, the point of lament is that it actually holds on to hope. The prophets place this hope in the character of God, that it is in his heart and capacity to restore justice. This is a resurrection hope, and for Paul, this hope has been explicitly realised in Jesus' resurrection. Our original commission was to be stewards of the earth. The kind of shift required between what our lives are now and what they would be in justice with creation and with others is a major journey. And the idea of doing it alone makes it seem all the more impossible, which I guess is why Paul has no such vision. Romans is precisely about becoming a community that joins the lament of creation and walks with the most vulnerable. As a community, can we together envision and adopt material habits and ways of living that move our lives in a regenerative, creation-loving direction?